Rest is not idleness. John Lubbock. Brain fog, fatigue, shortness of breath, tachycardia. More than 200 reported symptoms so far. Yet, for many of us, most standard medical tests came back normal. While COVID may feel like a distant memory for much of the world, for some of us, the story didn't end when the infection did. The trauma is still unfolding in a diagnosis with no known prognosis. My name is Joe, and I've been living with long COVID since the very beginning of the pandemic. Long Haul Hope isn't a medical podcast. It's a place for encouragement, connection, and solidarity. Because no matter where we find ourselves in the long haul, there is one thing we still have control over: hope. Welcome to Long Haul Hope. Have you ever left your house with your phone at 19%? Not intentionally. Maybe you overslept. Maybe you assumed it had been charging overnight and it wasn't. You grab it, you run out the door, and as you're getting into the car and starting to drive away, you look down at the screen and you realize it's at 19% and you don't have a charger. And now you've got a whole day ahead of you. So what do? You start making decisions. Maybe you turn the brightness down, you close some apps, you decide that you don't really need to watch that video right now. You think twice about every call, every search, every little thing that might drain the battery. Your phone still works, and that's the important part. And at 19%, it doesn't look broken. You can still make a call. You can still send a text. You can still open an app. But suddenly, everything has a cost. That's one of the best ways I've found to explain what living with long COVID fatigue can feel like. In the last episode, I talked a little about participating in a project focused on the experiences of rural patients living with long COVID. That project ended up rekindling something for me. It reminded me why I started Long Haul Hope in the first place. And while I was recording my story for that project, I found myself coming back to this image of a phone battery. Because for years, I thought fatigue meant just being really, really tired, exhausted. But it doesn't. Being tired is getting a terrible night's sleep and dragging yourself through the next day. You're exhausted, you're cranky, but eventually you crawl in bed, get some sleep. Hopefully you wake up feeling better. Long COVID fatigue is different. When it hits me hard, everything feels heavy. My body feels fuzzy. And sometimes, many times, it feels like every cell in my body is starving for oxygen. There's this incredibly unpleasant feeling inside me that's hard to describe, except to say that sometimes I really feel like I'm going to crawl out of my own skin. And when I'm really crashed, things that should require almost no thought suddenly become enormous. Getting off the couch to use the bathroom, taking a shower, making something to eat, and sometimes even laying there holding my phone is hard because it feels heavy. My eyes are sensitive to light. I can't read. I can't concentrate. I can't focus. And sleep doesn't fix it. The only relief sleep brings is a temporary escape from that unpleasant physical feeling that permeates my body. But when I wake up, it's still there. You see, I can go to bed exhausted, sleep for hours, sleep for the day, wake up, and still be at 19% or less. So I've had to learn how to live differently. When my capacity is low, I start rationing. If something is going to push my heart rate up for more than a minute or two, it probably has to wait. If I have somewhere I absolutely have to be later in the day, then I may spend most of the hours beforehand resting so I have enough energy to actually get there. And sometimes that means staying close to home because I don't know whether that 19% is going to hold or become 12 or 7. or one. But one of the things people don't always understand is that energy isn't only spent by your muscles. Thinking costs energy. Making decisions costs energy. Driving costs energy. Reading can cost energy. Listening can cost energy. And relationships can cost energy too. Last episode, I said that somewhere along the way I disappeared. And some of that disappearing was very literal. I stopped showing up. I stopped calling people. Messages would sit unanswered. And I think I really need to check in with them. And then I'd think it again the next day and the next. Not because I didn't care. Sometimes because I cared enough that I knew I didn't have the energy to be fully present. A casual conversation may not sound like exertion, but when your brain is already operating on limited capacity, you're listening, you're processing, you're interpreting, you're remembering, you're figuring out what to say, you're reading the other person's emotions, you're managing your own. And that's one of the harder parts of this for me because I have more meaningful relationships than I have energy to maintain. There's grief in that. There's shame in constantly having to triage people you care about. Who do I have enough capacity to connect with today? Who can I respond to? Who has to wait? And who starts slowly disappearing from my life because I just cannot keep up? If you've been on the other side of that, if someone with a chronic illness has stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped showing up, I want you to understand something. Their absence may not mean what you think it means. Sometimes disappearing is not rejection. Sometimes it's 19%. And I think that's where people can unintentionally turn a physical limitation into a character judgment. If somebody doesn't do something, we assume they don't want to. They're lazy. They're unmotivated. They don't care enough. They're not trying. And I've spent a lot of my life wrestling with those kind of labels. But fatigue is not a choice. I do not get to wake up in the morning and decide whether today is going to be a fatigue day. I don't get to choose how severe it will be. I don't get to choose how long it lasts. But what I can choose is how I respond to it. I can listen sooner. I can rest. I can cancel plans. I can stop trying to prove to others that I'm okay. Having people around me who understand that makes an enormous difference. My wife, Shelley, has gotten pretty good at recognizing when I'm pushing myself, sometimes better than I am. She'll remind me to rest. She'll ask me what my numbers look like that day. She'll ask what my capacity is, and then she meets me there. Not where she wishes I was, not where I was yesterday, not where I think I should be, but where I actually am. And sometimes when I'm frustrated or emotionally dysregulated or beating myself up because I'm not doing enough, she'll gently remind me, Joe, you have long COVID. So if you love someone living with long COVID or really any illness that limits their energy, one of the most helpful things you can do is to believe their battery meter. If they tell you they're at 19%, don't argue that they look like they're at 60 or 70. Don't tell them how much they accomplished yesterday. Don't assume that because they managed to do one thing, they must have the energy to do five more. Just meet them where they are. And maybe ask, what does 19% mean for you today? And if you're the one living at 19%, I hope you hear this too. Your fatigue is not a moral failure. It is not proof that you're lazy. It is not proof that you don't care. And the fact that you were able to push through something doesn't mean it didn't cost you. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to stop before the battery hits zero. Because this isn't just being tired. It's living on limited power in a world that usually assumes you're fully charged. And some days, 19% is what we've got. So we learn to use it carefully and with intention. And hopefully, the people who love us learn to understand what that number really means. Thank you for listening. Long Haul Hope is more than just a podcast, it's a community. If you have a story you'd like to tell, a lesson from the long haul, or a spark of hope to share, please email me at joe@longhaulhope.com. Your experience could help someone else find a little hope on their journey. Together, we're stronger.